Guys, girls, and non-binary pals, the smug satisfaction of activating your out-of-office email auto-reply here with rhyme signatures. The nerdiest music review this side of experiencing the true joy of time away from the daily grind by listening to more metal than the whole of the Sheffield steel industry combined. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new Ancients album, Beyond the Reach of the Sun. You know, it's relatively easy for me to form a bond with a band over a shared similarity with one another. Sometimes it's that we're from the same town, sometimes it's that we have a mutual love of deep fried sweet and sour shrimp, but more often than not it's because we ultimately draw inspiration from the same sources, and our collective experience and love of music crosses paths in a beautiful and unrestrained manner. And sometimes it's something as simple as having a straightforward name that has one more incident of the letter I appearing in it than people are used to. Yes, folks, the word ancient, much like my real name, is traditionally spelt with one fewer use of this most excellent of letters, and as such I feel an automatic kinship with the band, as I am 100% certain that they too have had to put up with virtually every single person they've ever known misspelling it at every possible turn in their professional lives. But it also helps that the music that they're putting out is every bit the exact kind of sound I've been craving for quite some time. My esteemed audience, Ancients, have taken me on quite the journey with their third album, Beyond the Reach of the Sun, and I would like to cordially invite you all to put up with my excitable babbling about it. So, what's the big idea anyway? Who are Ancients? This gaggle of Canadian finery burst onto the scene back in 2013 with their debut album Heart of Oak, and I was immediately very impressed by what I heard. They came to me at the height of my Mastodon appreciation, so it came as very little surprise that they struck quite a chord with me, being as they were very much singing from a similar hymn sheet to them, albeit bringing in a little bit of a taste of the death metal we were getting from middle-era Opeth. It was a potent combination, and one that carried on delivering the goods with their sophomore record, Voice of the Void, that came out 3 years later. And while I don't think it had quite the same impact on me as their debut, it was nonetheless an enjoyable slice of progressive sludginess. But since then, all the way back in the hedonistic days of 2016, it's been virtually radio silence from the band, and as the years went on, their existence moved to the back of my memory, only coming back out when I'd see their name crop up from time to time on Reddit threads and what have you, reminding me of just how much I loved these guys. So colour me super excited when earlier this year I learned they were back. It has been a very long 8 years. I've grown a lot as a person in that time. 30-year-old me was a very different beast to 38-year-old me. And now, as I stare down the barrel of the inevitability of my 40s coming around the corner, have Ancients learnt any new tricks in the time that they've been gone, or should this band have stayed buried? Right, let's get one thing very clear with this album. This is a slow burn. This will take you a while to truly appreciate everything that the band are bringing to bear. The guys are happy to take their time with everything they do. There's no sense of rushing around trying to get to the point on this record. It's got a slow and methodical feel, reminding me a lot of the Ents from Lord of the Rings, you know. It takes the band a long time to not say very much, which can be both their biggest blessing as well as their biggest curse, depending on how you look at this. Now, I'm leaning on the side of blessing, as it does help the album to feel rich, textured, and full of the kind of depth of layering that only the very best of progressive metal has to offer. I've waited a week before dropping this review, as quite frankly I've been spending my time with this one. Just as the band wants you to sip their waters slowly, drinking it all in and allowing the flavours of what's on offer to appreciate within you, I've been taking my time reflecting on the impact that they've had on me with what it is they've created here. One thing is abundantly clear on this album. This is a guitar lover's record. The axes are the stars of the show here, and there's barely a minute goes by on this album where chief string merchants Brock McInnes and principal songwriter Kenny Cook aren't blowing my mind with something creative, effervescent, and frankly downright jaw-dropping. The guitars really take on a personality of themselves, feeling like they're telling a story that you can only really understand and appreciate if you take the time to learn their language. It's complex and layered with so many hidden details and nuances to appreciate and recognise. The stylistic shifting and approaches to the guitar work here are simply astonishing. We get bluesy Wild West sections, soaring clean David Gilmour-esque solos, crunchy and punchy riffing that feels right at home in a Sleep or Mastodon album, and some absolutely blistering shredding that will just frankly make your head spin. As I've said, this is very much a guitar album, but don't think that either Rory O'Brien's bass or Mike Hannay's drums are an afterthought at all. They have locked in with each other beautifully and provide one of the most solid bedrocks to almost any album that I've listened to this year. It's all incredibly well mixed too, with the rolling thunder of the pair of them feeling present at all times, and it keeps pace expertly with the twin axe warriors at the front of the ship. The low-end rhythm steers the whole experience through some very turbulent waters, and it all helps to keep the record feeling whiskey smooth and easy, despite how chaotic and frenzied the accenting can be at times. It's a huge soup of ideas, and while there's a lot of creative expression going on within the stylistic approaches here, it all manages to feel super cohesive and spun from the same yarn across its entire length. Kenny Cook's vocals ride this line between the kind of silken smooth stoner rock passages with a gentle, warming, and overall rather inviting tone before the leve breaks and the harsh edge and angle is brought to bear, feeling about as monstrous as the best of titans of the genre like even Mikael Åkerfeldt. Now it's around about a 70-30 split, I would say, between cleans and growls, so even if those kinds of vocals aren't really your thing, it's not the primary focus here. With that being said though, with how good Kenny's growl vocals are, I imagine this is the kind of nexus event that could convert someone to being a fan. The album is extremely chunky, featuring 10 songs at around an hour in length, or an hour and 15 if you include the bonus extras on the end, and it does at times feel that length. The music being as dense and treacle thick as it is makes for an album that's not a listen for all seasons. This is a record that speaks to a very particular mood, but when that mood hits, then Beyond the Reach of the Sun feels like a transcendent experience, utterly untouchable within its own niche, serving as a monolithic pillar of excellence that other bands just wish they could aspire to. The occasional use of synths and keyboards helps to vary up the sound a bit across the album's runtime, but don't expect this to suddenly go full Dream Theater or anything. These sounds are used to a Spartan degree, but it's how well that they've been brought into the equation that makes their brief appearances all the more memorable. The ending of third track, Is It Your God, is a notable highlight and one of my favourite parts of the entire album. The tasteful moments of calm amidst the storm are where the record truly shines at its brightest for me. Take the understated intro of fifth track, Cloak of the Vast and Black. This really showcases just how efficient Brock and Kenny are, and how well they exercise restraint before allowing an explosive propulsion into the meat of the driving riff that carries the early life of the song. It's overwhelming at times just how many riffs the guys have packed into each and every song on the album, and with a typical running time of between 5 to 7 minutes per song, there's an awful lot of guitar that they've squeezed into it all. You've probably figured out by now that I'm a huge fan of this album, but in spite of how brilliant this record is and how well the guys have managed to craft a masterpiece of its own niche, it remains a niche album. It's possibly too death metal for Mastodon fans and too sludge metal for Opeth fans. But for those of us who sit in the halfway house between these two styles, Ancients have truly struck gold on this album. I do love the addition of synth and keyboards to the experience. It adds a great deal of texture and thought to an already complex and layered recording. These moments of synth work are big highlights of whichever tracks they appear on, but in a selfish way I'd prefer it if there was more of their inclusion throughout the album. It feels like perhaps we're being teased with not enough of a good thing. Like when your fries don't have enough salt, they're still good, but you just know that with a little bit of extra sodium, they'd really be kicked up a notch, and the same is very much true here. This is also an almost impossibly dense album for a casual listen. In truth, my first couple of spins, it was largely in one ear and immediately out the other. There was just too much happening, too many ideas being spun around, and it all felt creatively cluttered and manic to the point where I wasn't sure initially if the album was landing for me at all. It's when I took the album song by song, giving myself a breather between each track, that I started to get a better grasp and handle on what I was being presented with, and when the album started to reveal its secrets to me. It's a lot to ask for a casual listener though, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are people out there who are put off beyond the reach of the sun. In spite of that, this is an album worth persevering with. I've listened to this about a dozen times now, I think, and I am still discovering things that I've previously missed. And it's making this record a true delight to keep coming back to. Yes, I've got some minor quibbles here and there, but nothing that throws me off or prevents me from seeing the overall grandeur behind the tiny cracks. So, what else can I possibly say about Ancients beyond the reach of the sun? Yeah, I have been knocked on my ass by this album. In the 8 years since their last record, the band have been hard at work refining their sound, tightening the songwriting, and really focusing on making the best possible album that they could. This, for me, is the benchmark for how to make a comeback. This is the record that fans deserved and newcomers will adore. No, it's not the easiest album in the world to pick up and get involved with. This is not fast food progressive metal, after all. This is a 7-course fine dining experience for a refined and sophisticated palate. Everything on here, though, has clicked with me. There's not a single track I don't love, and the re-recording of Raise the Sun and Built to Die from Heart of Oak serve as a lovely little gift to those of us who've been there since the very beginning. Ancients may have taken a long time to reach album number 3, but what a treat this is. What an absolute love letter to modern progressive metal. I can barely fault this album, try as I might, and I will happily call this a real threat and challenge to my coveted Album of the Year accolade. This record even has some of the best artwork of the year, so it stands to reason that I would implore you all to grab a physical copy of this one. Mine's on the way, and I can't wait to spend the coming months continually obsessing over every little nugget of musical complexity on offer. This is truly one of the best metal albums of the 2020s so far, and something that everyone needs to check out immediately. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, so if you loved or hated this one, please talk to me about your experience of the record in the comments down below. Please do drop me a thumbs up if you liked the video. Please do tell your friends all about little old me, and please do throw me a subscription if you've been enjoying my content. But until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.